Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of India Science Podcast. This is a different one. As I'm sure you can see three pretty faces here on the video. So this edition of the India Science Podcast is a video that you're seeing right here on YouTube or Facebook or IGTV, and it's also audio. So choose what you may. In fact, you'd rather just watch the video and listen to the audio. My name is Ankit Vengurlekar. I have been a science and technology journalist for a decade and a half. Some of you know me as Gadgetwala. And today my role is the questioner. I'm the interviewer. I'm basically going to be asking a lot of questions. And joining me are two incredible people from the space community. Let me start with the one closest to us, and that is Jennifer Blank, known as Jen. Jen, as you can see, is very, very close by. She's literally just outside my window because she's in outer space. Hi, Jen.
Hello.
So Jen is, I'm going to read this out because, oh my God, Jen does so many awesome things. Jen Blank is an astrobiologist with the Blue Marble Space Institute of Science at NASA. That's right. We pulled out the big guns on this. Yeah, thanks to Siddharth. So she's at NASA Ames Research Centre. And I'm really glad that she's joining us for this conversation to give a NASA/American space perspective. And of course, I have Dr. Siddharth Pandey, who's also my co-host on the India Science Podcast and co-brainchild on this entire idea. He's a space researcher and head of Center of Excellence in Astrobiology at Amity University in Mumbai. Now, quick trivia, quick fun fact. Jen, I don't know if you know, but the first time I met Siddharth was literally 1 year ago. Okay, and the occasion was quite opportune. The reason we're having this conversation is 22nd of July, 2019 was the date when India's Chandrayaan 2 mission was launched. And I was sitting in the studios of my former newsroom, and Siddharth Pandey was one of the esteemed guests on my panel. Chandrayaan 2 has been dubbed as India's, ISRO's most ambitious and most complex space mission ever. But break it down for us and help us understand, why is it so complex?
It's complex because this is the first mission which is going to land on the moon. Not only that, you see, Chandrayaan 1 landed. Let us not get that clear. That was a hard landing. Mm-hmm. But this one, they're going to pull off a soft landing, and it is very, very complicated.
I think now is also a good time to remind our viewers that India has never soft landed on any other spatial object anywhere else. Of course, there may have been simulations that have happened, but when you are literally 4 lakh odd kilometers away from home, and for all systems to work in tandem and the landing sequence to happen just right, it is
very, very nail-biting. We'll be sitting on the edge of our chairs, and it's a new awakening in India that day.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk costs. And how does the Chandrayaan 2 mission compare in terms of what did it cost to get it up there in space, and how does it compare to other space missions?
So the spacecraft by itself, as I understand, is about 600 odd crores. Mm-hmm. And including the cost of the launch, it comes out to be about a 970 crore Indian rupee value.
Okay. Is that popular? High? Is that low?
I would say it's about half the value of the Avengers Endgame movie. So it's a popular sentiment in India that we tend to compare our missions with grandeur sci-fi movies. But what it does is it does two things. One is it shows us how efficient we really are with our resources and how we're able to achieve such things, and not just for a mission, but for an entire program. That we are investing money in the right way. We're getting the most out of it.
And here we are a year from now doing our own independent podcast and chat. So thank you, Siddharth, and thank you, Jen, for joining.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely. Pleasure. Yeah. So much fun.
Okay, let's dive straight into this. Like I said, 22nd of July, 2019 was a very, very big deal because Chandrayaan 2 mission was launched. And I made a video last year with some highlights of the launch. So I'm going to play a little bit of that clip to be able to take you through the experience that was last year. Sid, how does it feel sitting here 1 year since the launch date? Of course, just to jog people's memory, while Chandrayaan 2 mission launch was successful, the actual end goal, which was to do a soft landing on the south side or the dark side of the moon, That bit was unsuccessful because the soft landing didn't happen, and the Pragyan rover that we were waiting for it to, travel on the surface of the moon, that didn't happen. But the orbiter still works. Why don't you actually just recap us and tell us what worked, what didn't work, Siddharth?
Thanks a lot, Ankit. So I think the mission took off beautifully. We were all there together. We saw the countdown, and then we had this amazing rocket takeoff. Took itself in a trajectory, put itself into Earth orbit, and then slowly and steadily it kept moving away from the Earth. Every time it was the furthest away from Earth in its orbit, it just kept nudging itself towards the moon, and then it took itself on that journey towards the moon, and then it reached the lunar orbit. It was able to insert itself in an orbit around the moon. And then that's when things get tricky and challenging, because it's like I had said, it's almost like an orchestrated play of events where all these different subsystems have to work together, your engines, your software, your communications, your power. And it was a software glitch. So what happens is you're moving towards the moon and you're going very fast, and you have to slow down and make sure that your speed is such that you're able to land, have a soft landing. So how normally you stop, you can't really stop anything in space because there's no air, so you can't really press against anything. So how that happens is that you fire your thrusters in the opposite direction. So rather than it taking you forward, you kind of fire the thrusters forward, so then you go backwards. And it's done in two kinds of braking. There's a rough brake and then there's a fine brake. So it was able to execute the rough brake quite well, where it was able to reach the stage at which the fine brake had to take on, but then the fine brake did not work. And what we are learning right now is mainly because of a software glitch inside the guidance system, which prevented it from doing it. And it's a very challenging system which hasn't been perfected by almost any organization in its first attempt. It's soft landing on a different surface is not easy, and it's because of that lander came down at such a high velocity that it had a crash landing, and about 800 meters away from where it was supposed to land. And I think it was one of those moments where we were all awake at night, 2 a.m. here in India, and as that happens with most catastrophes during missions, they don't immediately announce it. There's always a cut off communication, and then we kind of hear news trickling out as and when we do.
And nearly 3 months ago, India's ambitious attempt at making space history ended when its scientists lost communication with the Chandrayaan 2 spacecraft, moments before it was supposed to touch down on the moon. After a months-long search, America's space agency, NASA, now says it has located the crash site, thanks to an amateur astronomer from India. DW reporter Peter Dahl is here with more. Welcome, Peter. So a space mystery solved by an amateur space detective.
Yeah, it's a really cool story. This is just a regular guy from India who basically managed to do what some of the world's leading space scientists couldn't. His name is Shanmugha Subramanian. He's a 33-year-old mechanical engineer and a self-proclaimed space nerd. So when the Indian Mission Control lost contact with the spacecraft, he decided to join the search and see if he could find it.
Okay, so how did he do that?
Well, he did all of it from his laptop, from his home. He scoured satellite images that were shared by NASA. About a week after they were released, he tweeted what he believed to be the crash site, comparing an image of the targeted landing site before and after the spacecraft went missing. And so he flagged his findings to NASA, which then decided to take a closer look. We should see the images right here. Again, they compared the before and after images of the supposed crash site. And lo and behold, if we zoom in a little bit, maybe you can see that he was spot on. You see it? Well, zoom in a bit more. There it is. It's that little tiny white dot right there. So, really, talk about looking for a needle in a haystack.
I was watching from my house actually, and tweeting and watching the video feed live from from ISRO, and there was that awkward silence, and everyone, tens of millions of people were watching live, and it was so exciting. And I saw you, Sid. That was good. Looking very well. You're very articulate. That was good. And but just waiting to see what happened, right? So we waited after the launch. It took 3 weeks, almost a month, before it got into the orbit, ready to start decaying to come toward that soft landing. And then I think it was another 3 weeks. So this is, was short in terms of space time, but this was a lot of build up to that soft landing. And then we didn't know what had happened at first. But the cool thing is that there was so much hope and so much positive energy. Just you could feel it sort of coming through the computer, because everyone wanted to succeed and wanted the mission to succeed. And also everyone was just so proud, I think, just of India's effort. So, and I know that there was a big pause and a few minutes of no communication with listeners, which is usually a bad sign. Just means they don't know what happened, but that's often not good. And then at the end, actually, just watching the live feed again when we learned that it had crashed, it was still sad, but people were disappointed, but people weren't traumatized. I thought that was really, really beautiful.
इंडियन स्पेस रिसर्च ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के चेयरमैन डॉक्टर के सिवन को गले लगाते हुए, पीठ थपथपाते हुए, हौसला बंधाते हुए माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी.
I'd like to understand from you, someone who's sitting tens of thousands of kilometers away from where the action's happening here in India, and someone who's working with NASA, Chandrayaan 2, for context, I'm not sure how much that is in dollars, but costed anything between 900 to 1,000 crore rupees.
So it'll be roughly about 150 million.
Because that's considered a low budget. People were impressed with that. Well, the scope of the mission to have an orbiter and a lander and then a brain. I thought that was fun. Well, but it was very ambitious for that kind of budgetary scope. And you're right, all these things are really hard, and only very few, India would have been the fourth country to send a lander to the lunar surface, and I guess China's been the most recent one. Right away they were talking about we're ready to go on to number 3, right? So that was really exciting. It wasn't like, oh, let's just wait, this is embarrassing. It's like the whole world's watching. The orbiter's wonderfully successful, the lander didn't make it, and we'll get it next time.
But Siddharth, Jen actually touched upon a good point that, despite the failure of Vikram lander and Pragyan rover not really making contact the way it was intended to happen with the Chandrayaan 2 mission, despite that, K. Shivan, the chairman of ISRO, and the team of engineers and developers, they went ahead and they committed to Chandrayaan 3 mission, which was slated to happen sometime in 2020. But with the new world that we're living in, with coronavirus and pandemic, I'm not really sure what's going to happen. I don't think you can really launch a space mission by working from home. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I was going to ask about that. I know that the Mangalan, was it 2 or 3, was
Mangalyaan 2.
Mangalyaan 2
has
that's 2021, right, Sid?
So Mangalyaan 2 is actually, it hasn't even been given a date. It's actually been now pushed further out because of Gaganyaan, the human spaceflight. That's kind of taken priority. And we'll actually have
2023, 24, India's first manned space mission?
No, they have a mandate to put an Indian in low Earth orbit by 15th of August, 2022.
Gaganyaan, India's first manned mission to space, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's announcement on the 72nd Independence Day that an Indian astronaut would go into space by 2022. The Indian Space Research Organisation has finally got a definitive timeline for a project it has been working on for the last several years.
Whoa!
Which will be the 75th independence anniversary of India.
Wow.
So it's all kind of lining up for that. And because of that, they've had to decide and prioritize missions. So there's going to be a Venus orbiter mission called Chandrayaan. Chandrayaan is going to happen, it was supposed to happen in 2022, 2023. But it's all, so I think in May we had an official announcement where we were told that COVID will most definitely affect the launch schedules for all of these missions. So they'll definitely be pushed out at least 6 months down. But we were told that Gaganyaan will not slip. So I don't know how that works. Now, ISRO has just had a few COVID cases this last week in their headquarters, and they were all working initially alternate days, 50% capacity, and now they're just all shut. So yeah, we're all kind of, you know, in the same boat right now.
As
And
everyone
it's
else. The question I really wanted to ask Siddharth is, you know, as a very, very young space agency, ISRO is very young compared to NASA or Roscosmos or any other space program out there, right? European Space Agency as well. How do you think it affects the sentiment of the space agency when a mission doesn't go as planned? Are we mature enough to handle failure? And you know, how does that affect communicating the failure to the masses at large?
So I think two answers for your question there. ISRO is not really a young agency. It's actually one of the older agencies. The way in which it is, because it was formed in the 60s and then it's been having missions since the 70s and 80s. But the way I agree with you that it is young is it's only, 12 years back is when it started doing planetary science missions. It started venturing into outer space, right? And that's when its experience is still kind of developing. How do you deal with catastrophes at those scales where you're spending so much time, spending so much of money developing these missions? ISRO has had a history of successes and failures like all space agencies. And I mean, I've been reading, I was too young, but in the early 80s, I wasn't involved in the early 80s. In the early 80s, whenever ISRO had like a failure, you know, the media would just tear them to bits. I still remember there was a particular rocket that used to launch off, Sriharikota, and it used to almost every time fall into the Bay of Bengal. So, you know, and the leadership at that time used to get a lot of flack for it. I can't remember. They had an acronym for that. You know, they used to make fun of it and say that it's sea recovery vehicle or something they used to call it. That used to almost always fall in the sea. But the leadership took it head on. Everybody talks about it that the initial leadership of ISRO under Vikram Sarabhai, under Satish, Dhawan, you know, these were giants. These people used to take everything on their shoulders and they used to come out and do the press conferences. And I mean, I still remember there used to be this saying that Satish Dhawan, whenever there was a success, he used to put his engineers to talk to the media. And whenever there was a failure, he used to himself be there and, you know, say that, yes, very explicitly, we've failed.
Sriharikota, Sunday, 17th April. A great day for India as the nation prepares to launch an advanced developmental satellite and soar higher into space. The 23-meter-long 4-stage SLV-3 rocket is to put a 41.5-kilogram Rohini satellite into an elliptical orbit.
Finally, I took a decision. I bypassed the computer, I launched the system. First stage worked is a 4-stage rocket, and second stage got mad. It went to the spin. Instead of putting the satellite in the orbit, it put in the Bay of Bengal. 1979, it was a failure. It was a first time I experienced my failure. How do you manage the failure? Success I can manage. So at that time, a great man, a great leader, Professor Satish Dhawan, he comes to me, I'm very tired working nearly for months. He wakes me up, come, let us go for a press conference. Press is meeting there, like this, number of people, world press, with photos, this and that, all the gadgets, they are there. I was really frightened, I will be the culprit, because I'm the project director, mission director. What Satish Dhawan said, chairman, Indian Space Research Organization, said, dear friends, we have failed today. It's the first time I have to give all the success, all the failure is, I want to support my technologists and scientists and staff so that next year they succeed. So he took the whole blame himself. And then media asked, you put Bay of Bengal so many crores, you are putting like that, lot of criticism. He received the criticism. He assured them in a year we will succeed with our team. It's a very good team. Next year, here only interesting happened. Next year, July 18th, 1980, when he succeeded, Professor Dhawan said, you go and conduct the press conference. Do you follow what this means? It means when the failure occurred, the leader took it up. When the success came, he used his team. That's the first.
But times were very different back then. I think even the media wasn't as big. And today, if you see the role of the media when it comes to disseminating information, it's very, very different. They're almost everywhere. And I think ISRO has, to some extent, had a muted response towards the Chandrayaan 2 mission. They've kind of let information trickle out and talk about it here and there. There hasn't been an admission that, yes, a huge portion of that mission did not successfully, get executed. And I think the question you're asking is very right. Like from now onwards, we're going to be going with these human-rated vehicles where the failures could, we hope not, but they could be. I mean, we have to be open. In space, it's always a case of planning and execution. If something fails, it's because of a calculated risk. It's not just something which nobody knew about that could happen. So I think it will come with time, and hopefully we will see a little more clarity from ISRO and in how they approach these kind of failures if they were to happen in the future.
Got it. I mean, I wish them all the luck. I love ISRO. I love what they're doing for space exploration in the country. And I love how it, like you said, Jen, hundreds and thousands of young kids are looking up to the skies, are looking up at television screens and getting inspired to foray into space. Jen, why don't you talk to us about what you're working on right now? You told me that, you're working on the Curiosity Mars rover, and that obviously piqued my curiosity. And I'm like, wait, what? She's already on Mars? Tell us what you're doing.
Well, actually, most of my time these days is, and Sid knows about this, has to do with projects on Earth that help us practice for future projects on Mars. So yes, I've done operational duties on Curiosity, which is, I'm part of the science team for the ChemCam instrument. And this rover has been going a long time on Mars now. It's supposed to last 1 Martian year. That was the nominal mission duration. And it's been renewed several times now, and each time the budget goes down like a step or stairs. But it's fired a laser on Mars over 700,000 times. So that's generated a lot of data. And I'm one of the lucky people who's been able to help pick the target rocks to get zapped. And now actually NASA is using more and more using a computer to do that. So as the budget for people goes down, they've, and the data, amount of data increases, they can essentially use algorithms to pick the best targets. And this was tested with this Mars exploration rover, Spirit and Opportunity, and now it's coming into play with Curiosity because everyone's attention is on the Perseverance rover, or I like to call it Percy, because it sounds cuter. And Percy's going to launch no earlier than July 30th. So that's in less than 2 weeks. And all of my friends who are on the Percy team, and I'm not a part of that science team, but we went out to the Cape Canaveral to see the launch of the Curiosity rover. And they're all going to be watching from home like the rest of us. So we all have that opportunity to share in the experience. They're keeping it open to everybody. Anyway, people are excited about that. And in terms of what I'm working on and what mission I'm excited about, I'm actually excited about a Japanese mission coming up to the moon, because Japan, they're going to go go back to a site called the Marius Hole, and they think that's a skylight into a lava cave on the moon. And I'm excited because I'm actually studying lava caves on Earth with people. We're trying to characterize all of the signs of life you can see in the caves, whether it's the microbes depositing slime there, changing the rock chemistry, or precipitating minerals in the caves. And then we're coupling that with a robotic study of caves. So we have a robot. In fact, we started out with a pretty basic robot on wheels, and now we're working with Boston Dynamics, who have given us 2 spot robots. So we're going to be able to walk in the caves. Now we're picking caves that are easy to walk into. It's not always the case. And anyway, exploring and looking for signs of life with the robots. So that's exciting. It's not nearly as exciting as working on another planet, and I hope one day though that's what we'll be doing.
That sounds mind-blowing. I'm such a huge fan of the Spot robots by Boston Dynamics. And you're studying lava caves. I think I'm just going to be, whenever this video gets published, I'm just going to sit and re-watch this section of the video, because everything you've just said so casually is the stuff that dreams are made of for so many people working in science.
Yeah, well, but as Sid knows too, I mean, it takes so many years of trying. And I talk with my friends and colleagues who actually have an instrument that's going to another planet. One of the most effective and exciting instruments on the Curiosity rover was something called ChemIn, and it was one of the two big instrument suites on that rover that, material was brought into the rover and then processed like you'd be doing in laboratory on Earth. It was the first time we're actually able to identify the minerals as opposed to just the elemental chemistry of something on Mars. And with ChemIn, we're able to tell you exactly what kind of clay, not just, oh, there's something with calcium, but hey, this is a clay mineral, and oh, this is a different kind of mineral. And so that was really exciting. But the person who was the principal instrument developer for that, he tried for over 25 years. So he spent his career building a flight-ready X-ray diffractometer that could go on a mission. And it cost him his health. It cost him, and I'm so grateful for him and for his sake that it was successful, right? And it's just an amazing instrument. But there is a trade-off. You really have to be motivated, driven, and just can't give up, because I guess it's harder than acting, because there are more roles for actors. There aren't as many missions.
Okay, we've spoken a lot of science. Let's talk some pop culture. I want some fun answers from both of you, since both of you are actual space scientists. What's your favoriteest space movie of all time, Jen?
I don't know.
A space movie or a space show or series? Netflix, Amazon Prime, they have so many amazing shows.
Yeah, I've been, actually, it's really funny you mentioned this, because I've been watching The Next Generation. I only watched some of those TV shows, and I've been watching that now during the
lockdown.
Yeah, and they're so corny.
One movie, come on, Jen. One movie that you think scientifically gets things right.
I guess right now I'd say The Martian. I just love that movie.
The Martian, yes. Oh my God, yes. Love Matt Damon. But how close, as an astrobiologist, tell me, Jen, how close are we to actually growing potato out of human feces on the surface of Mars or any other planetary body out there?
Well, my friends who study how to grow plants on the moon, for example, say that he wouldn't have had a crop like that. Now, that said, I think I've talked about this with Sid, that the gale force winds don't exist on Mars. So even the whole premise for the Martian movie is not really accurate, but I don't care. I thought it was, it was wonderful.
Creative. Yeah. Those were creative licenses which we will easily grant to the director. Yeah. I think the level of perchlorate, which is a very toxic salt in the Martian top layer, is quite high. And in some places, it's actually as deep as 100 meters. So we still don't have enough data. That's what I understand on the Martian, like on a global level, what is the distribution of perchlorate? But it would not be so straightforward that he'd be having these potatoes blooming all around.
Okay, don't be a buzzkill with all the science. Don't be a buzzkill. Don't do that.
So here's my answer to your question. I think for me, yes, for sure. Martian right now rules. It's on the. It's like it's like a music chart for me. Like there's no one all-time favorite at all points of time. It really keeps moving with the season, with what's in the what's in the mind. What am I working on?
Yeah. Name some other ones you like. And what about you, Ankit? What's your favorite movie? Space movie.
After Siddharth answers.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So I'll go with Martian. I actually liked The Right Stuff. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
Right Stuff. What is that?
It's actually it's an adaptation of a novel that was written by, I think, Tom Wolfe, and it's based on the first 7 NASA astronauts, the Mercury astronauts, the original 7 astronauts.
America's Mercury astronauts!
7 men who would risk their lives in a hurtling piece of machinery to cross the threshold of space.
It takes a special kind of man to volunteer for a suicide mission, especially when it's on TV.
Oh, wow. And it kind of is a story of, and it's an actual kind of, you can say it's not fictional, it's actually quite true. And it covers the stories of these, the lives and the families of these 7 people and how they were selected and how NASA actually went from, oh my God, there's a Russian, the top of a ballistic missile flying over us, from there all the way to the fact that they had built the first successful human spaceflight program that was doing all of these beautiful things.
I'm glad you asked me, Jen. So I very, very recently watched this Hindi movie, Bollywood movie called Mangalyaan, which was on the Mars mission. And it's a movie where, there are three or four incredible female actors. And there's Akshay Kumar, who's one of the top leading Bollywood stars. And while it was, it was quintessential masala Bollywood. There was singing and dancing by scientists and all of that. But I liked what it set out to achieve, which is to inspire the masses with the space mission. And, it was a good fitting tribute to the scientific community and to ISRO. I think this was the first sort of public work that brought ISRO's work in the mainstream consciousness of pop culture. So Mangalyaan, despite all its flaws as a movie itself, but in Hollywood, I think the 2016 movie Hidden Figures for me really, really, really stood out. The movie about 3 African-American women who were mathematicians in the 1960s. And I absolutely love the layered storytelling, right? Of course, they're preparing, these women were human computers and they're computing crazy amount of data, but they're also dealing with segregation due to the color of their skin, African Americans. And there's a whole Black Panther movement going on, right? And discrimination due to their gender. And my goodness, that movie gives me the goosebumps every single time I watch it or think of it. And from an OST, original soundtrack, and just, the amount of bucket loads of tears I have shed watching it perspective, because I'm also a father, Interstellar. Oh my God, Matthew McConaughey and his relationship with his daughter. Oh my God, I'm gutted watching that. So these...
That's I like that you mentioned The Right Stuff. You said, because that is such a great movie. It makes you laugh. It's so funny. I mean, and it's a great film. And I was thinking it was filmed set in space, but another one that you may not heard of that's really another tearjerker, and actually has a lot to do with the father-son relationship, is something called October Sky. Have you heard of this one?
No, I haven't.
I've seen October Sky. I saw it as well in undergraduate. Yeah,
it's based on. It stars a young Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh wow!
It's based on essentially a memoir of a NASA engineer who grew up. He was brought up in a coal mining town, where you went through high school and then you went to the mine, and it's I think from the 50s, or it was taking place in the 50s when the Soviet satellite would go overhead and they'd see it, and these kids started building little rockets in their backyards. And I mean, talk about a tearjerker. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's I've seen that movie many, many times. It's very, and they were inspired by a teacher.
October Sky, definitely going in my wish list. Okay.
I think that should be our recommendation, Ankit. We always have a recommendation for.
We do have recommendations, yes. So watch October Sky and definitely maybe read the book called Space that Siddharth mentioned. Okay. Favorite space figure in terms of either a scientist or an astronaut or an engineer or anybody, favorite space figure? Whoever's ready with an answer, go first.
That's a hard one.
Okay, I'll go first then. Definitely has to be 2 people. The late Kalpana Chawla.
Thank you very much. And you too. Colombia. Hello, Colombia. This is Prime Minister Gujral from India. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Gujral, I hear you loud and clear. How do you read me?
Kalpana, we are proud of you. each one of us in India is proud of us, proud of person like you who has done such a pioneering work. And particularly the women and youth of India take great deal of pride in seeing what you have done in the space. My hearty congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
You know, when I think of you, I think what a long journey you have covered from Karnal to space, long distance. And therefore, when I talk to you, I feel I'm talking to a person who is representing India in the space now. My all good wishes to you.
Thank you, sir, very much. Those are very kind words.
I think Kalpana Chawla's just imagery, you know, an Indian origin woman as a space astronaut. Oh my God. I personally know so many people who get so inspired by that name, Kalpana Chawla. Oh my God. And among living astronauts, people who are still alive and actively, you know, work on space, even though he doesn't fly anymore to the ISS, but the Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield, oh my God, that dude has my heart. You know, his version of David Bowie's Space Oddity shot from the International Space Station. What a cool chap. What a cool chap.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Lock your Soyuz hatch and put your helmet on. 10. Ground control to Major Tom. 7. 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2. Detach from station and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade, and the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. But it's time to guide the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I've left forevermore, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today. For here am I sitting in a tin can, far above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing left to do.
He in fact has an entire album that he's recorded, you know, bunch of songs that he recorded in the International Space Station. And I think as science communicators or space communicators, you know, there's hardly somebody as good as Chris Hadfield. He uses his reach really, really well. And frankly, you make him do anything, I'll watch it.
Wow, that's actually, Chris Hadfield's a great, I would agree with all the living astronauts I've seen. I've never met him, but I've seen him in terms of seen him on camera. He is, I think, leads the pack in terms of inspiring. We had Steve Smith call into one of our workshops, and I have not met him, and he seems incredible. I mean, I've probably met about 10 astronauts, and they're all exceptional humans, and that's so they're all inspiring.
I think for me, if I had to choose, it would probably be Kalpana Chawla and Carl Sagan. I think if you were to ask me the most impression building, so Kalpana Chawla, because her unfortunate demise was one of the reasons why I actually caught on to space. I was 13 years old, and when Space Shuttle Columbia went down, it was all over the news in India. And I really caught on to the fact that this is something worth giving your life for, right? This is much bigger than a country. It's about our existence, right? That's basically where it all started for me. So way back in 2003 was when I was like, this is it. And it's fortunately or unfortunately hasn't died out. I mean, space is still part of me. And with Carl Sagan, I think I discovered Sagan in NASA.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives.
I mean, I'm just very embarrassed to say this, that I was introduced to Sagan very late into my career. And when I was at NASA Ames as an intern, this is before I got onto a research project, we started reading about astrobiology, and we started reading about where it started, who were the people who actually were involved in the initial missions, who led the, established the foundation of planetary sciences, and asking these, just cosmic questions. And that's where I discovered Carl Sagan. And since then, I think it's just been the kind of philosophy that he has imbibed and brought on to NASA. I think NASA learned a lot from Carl Sagan. And through NASA, the world has learned a lot about space. So it's just been that, and we lost him too early, I think. I feel if he had been with us for another decade, we perhaps would have been having a different mindset. And I think when he was in his peak of his career is when we saw the Viking missions take place. And right after that, all of the different turmoils that took place because of which funding was plugged out of NASA. But even then, even in the early 90s and the mid 90s, he really gave some of the best speeches. And if you can find them on YouTube, all of the interviews he's given and the books that he's written. We need those kind of people right now in our world, who can really lead us through all of these pandemics and different crises, because it's not new to humanity. We have been having these events throughout, but it's that persistence, that perseverance, the rover that's leading us to Mars, the word perseverance, it's kind of what is needed right now to be able to get through all of these things.
Well, and Sid, I like that you mentioned Carl Sagan, because I didn't know him, but I met his wife, or his first wife. I met both of his wives, but his first wife was a fellow scientist, Lynn Margulies, and she was much lauded as a microbiologist and in the national academies and everything. And she was one of the people who sort of was promoting the idea of Gaia, that Earth is Gaia, so Earth Mother, and how everything is connected. And people laughed and said, that's stupid. And of course, now we're thinking, yes, we have an Earth biosphere. We have everything's connected. We have a signature of life on Earth, and we're going to try to use the signature that Earth has to look for life in exosolar planets. So that whole idea is now very much in fashion. But it was interesting because Carl Sagan, I think, at least I was told this, right? He was a little bit ahead of me, but he wasn't respected sufficiently by his peers. In other words, he never won big accolades in the scientific community because the big criticism was he spent too much time talking to the public. And I just think, that this is another attitude that's been changing, especially with social media, that, there's value, there's so much value, and we also want the public to buy into what we're doing, whether it's going to the moon or to Mars or just, going to outer space. And it's so valuable, and it requires a special skill. And Carl Sagan was a gifted person. I don't know if you've ever seen his Cosmos, the original Cosmos show. I think you can find some of the episodes on YouTube. But I like other communicators as well. But he he had that ability to seem like an intellectual and a scholar and talk to his audience without talking down to them. Whereas so many people I hear today make things really fun and this and that and sort of dumb things down. And he didn't. He wanted you to think. And so I think, since he's passed away, more in the scientific community has recognized that, wow, this he's one of our icons, right?
Well, I think we've totally overshot the time that we had budgeted for this. Not the luxury that space missions have to overshoot their budgets or time. They have to work on a strict timeline. But I really, really appreciate that you gave us almost an hour and 21 minutes of your time, Jen. I know it's close to bedtime for you, probably. There in San Francisco, isn't it?
No.
Not
and
yet.
Actually, yeah, no, well, it's 10 to 10 p.m. Actually, no, it's not. But thank you. It's a pleasure. It's the time has passed by very quickly.
Well, I'm really glad you took out the time. Thanks so much, Jen, and all the very best for the project that you're working on right now. And Siddharth, as always, thank you so much for joining. I'm not going to thank you too much because you're my partner in crime on this one.
Yeah. And you're doing a phenomenal job hosting as always. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So stay tuned for this. How can people reach out to you, Jen, on the World Wide Webs? Where are you available in case people would love to just, talk to you, slide into your DMs? How can they do that?
Well, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm not very active there. You can reach me on the Braille, which is the Volcanic Tube Project, the Braille, NASA Braille Twitter handle. That's probably the easiest way, or Instagram, NASA Braille Instagram account, or look for us on Facebook too.
Okay, perfect. Siddharth, people, how can reach out to you?
So I am on Twitter and on Instagram and also now on Facebook. So my first and last name, Siddharth Pandey, is where people can find me.
Perfect. And you guys can reach out to me. Just look up Gadgetwala on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram. And you'll basically find my two kittens over there and me trying to get in a word as well. Thank you so much, Jen. Wish you all the very best and good health considering the times we're living in and pandemic. I really hope you and your family stay healthy and stay well.
Thank you. Thanks. Same to you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Siddharth.
Yeah.
There you go. That's tofu. That's tofu and cocoa. I'm going to get more very soon. That's tofu and cocoa.